All right, now when we left off last night, we were in the process of getting ready to embark. So today, we're going to pick up with where we left off, sitting around our wagon. Uh-oh, hey, I heard that for the record, and I'd just like to say, Glitter Devil, the rules are that he who donates $25 gets to name the dwarf, and one of the initial 7 at that, of which there are only remaining, I'd like to point out. What did you want your dwarf to be named? I have to take care of that before I get started here, if possible. Is everybody wide awake this morning? Ready to get started? We can do that. Four left. All right, now, yesterday when we embarked, I did make mention of the fact that Toadie's made changes to how we will have to handle our embarks in the future. So those of you who've seen some of my tutorial videos for the past will notice that I'm going to do things a little differently this time out, mainly due to some of the changes that have gone on. Now, before we actually get fully underway, I kind of want to zoom out a little bit and kind of get a look at exactly what our map looks like. This is kind of something I do generally at the beginning when I first start on any map. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter what I've picked, just to get a lay of the land. And as you can see here, what we've got is we're at the foot of a small rise here. In the southwest corner, there's a small hill here. And then the rest of this is all tree covered. There's a pond here, and one couple on the other side of the river. The stream, excuse me. And then our stream kind of wanders through right here. So our wagon is here, and we'll probably set up our fort right in this central area here. It gives us maximum amount of area. We'll, oh, I guess maybe sound sensitive to the save it set. Let me look, see if it can still turn on. Sound sense is still too loud? Really, guys? At negative 15? Alright, I'll back it down a little more and see if that helps, but I would have thought that would have been, I wouldn't have thought that would have been so prevalent in the channel. Okay, hang on, there we go. Let's see if that's a little better. All right, so we've got everything in the wagon we brought with us, along with our draft animals and livestock surrounding it, and all our dwarves here. So everybody's parked around the outside of the wagon. You can kind of see the effect of text will be text here, because in the old version in the original version, vanilla of Dwarf Fortress, if I was seeing the top floor here, I wouldn't be able to see the lower tree level here as well at the same time. And as I zoom out, you can kind of get a picture of the trees as we go further up into the sky. And then as I get above the trees, now we're fully up into the sky at that point, and you don't see anything except the air itself. Now, remember, I did give myself several Z levels above the default. We're at 21 Z levels up, and I don't start to see the tips of the trees until Z level 16, which is 15 levels above where ground floor would hit. So I'm guessing Toadie still has trees coated for 15 floors of height, no matter what, to avoid the ceiling cap by default. Okay, fair enough. I'll try not to mangle the pronunciation in the future. Mostly. My wife's giving me shit for having done it in the first place. All right. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up a rudimentary bronze working facilities, because since we can't cut trees with wooden axes anymore, we have to make sure we get some bronze axes up as fast as possible in order to get our wood production going. We'll need bronze picks in order to be able to cut into the earth and actually strike the earth like a proper dwarf. And none of those things are available to us right at the beginning. So we'll start out by creating some workshops. And if you've brought some fuel with you, a unit of coke, a unit of charcoal, doesn't matter which, something to actually burn in the smelter, then you don't need a wood furnace. If you forgot to bring one, or if you just intentionally didn't bring one, then at that point you'll need to make yourself a wood furnace as well as what I've already built in order to produce some charcoal from wood. Since we brought a unit of coke with us, we're going to skip that step and we're going to get done a little faster. If you're embarking in a relatively placid area or someplace with uh, so many trees that you're going to have to clear cut the area just to be able to build anything anyway, then you may want to consider that you may want to. Yeah, last year's broadcast was pretty banal, really. Um, if you're someplace you have to clear cut to get to this, then you may want to consider a wood furnace just for the additional stuff. But since I only have 7 dwarfs to start, since my labor is relatively minimal, I want to get just what I need up and running as fast as possible. Uh, the only way you're going to get up faster than having the materials on hand like this is to actually have the raw good or the finished goods produced already. So let's pop over to Dwarf Therapist and take a look at our dwarves there, since it's the first time we're really going to get to use Therapist. First, we'll connect to the game. Now, when we connect, I've got Dwarf Therapist automatically set to read the status of our dwarves. If you don't, then you'll have to hit the read button up here at the top. So these guys have professions, and let's sort them out by what they're doing, what their profession ostensibly is. And that kind of gives you a better view of how they're differentiated from one another. All right, so when we start here, I'm going to take my mason, who doesn't really have anything better to do. We're going to put him on furnace duty, because I need somebody to do the actual smelting so that we can keep things running. My grower, who we made a weaponsmith early on, will handle our weaponsmithing detail once there's weapons to actually detail. And everybody else is going to handle wood cutting for now. We don't have any picks. And right off the bat, my primary concern is going to be getting enough wood to keep the carpenter busy while the miners get started. So we can't cut anything right away. We need to get a bronze axe up. We don't have the materials for the bronze axe yet. That's first. So everybody else has got a job to do that we haven't got prepared for yet. Now, and I always forget every time. Never fails. Architecture is the one skill that I never give anybody at the start, but everybody kind of needs. And I don't actually have to give them the skill. I just need to have somebody with the labor set so that I can actually set up my smelters and forges and stuff. There are certain buildings that require architecture to build. And if you don't have anybody with architecture, they will sit around and stare at the building all day long and never get any work done, which is terrible. And now, with all of those things set up, we should see our folks jump into action here, and you should see our mason come over here and start setting up our smelter, and our planter start setting up our forge, and our carpenter setting up the carpenter shop up here at the top. We'll just throw some miscellaneous stuff that we want to produce right off the bat. I don't need too many of these things. I'm not actually going to set up a work order for them. This workshop's not permanent, but I just want to get a few of these miscellaneous items created in case they become necessary. I'll need a bucket in case of emergency medical care. I'll need a couple cages in case I need to set up a cage trap real quick, or if I want to cage all my animals and then take them all downstairs in one trip, I can do that. A couple of barrels never hurts, and bins never hurts to have on hand in order to be able to store things as soon as we get our stockpiles created. So those are kind of some rudimentary essentials just to get us up and running in terms of wood goods. Now, in addition to those guys, oops. If I can quit hitting the tab key at the same time when I go to query here. Smelter's not quite done yet. Got to wait for the mason to finish up. There we go. Okay. Now, when you start out with the setup that we initially decided to take with us, you're going to have 1 unit of coke to start. So it's important that the first task you undertake is to make coke from bituminous coal. If you don't do that, you're going to use up your own unit of coke on something else. If you don't want to do that, you'll run out, and then you'll have to make more, which is terrible. Don't do it. So, coke first, then bronze bars. Now, if you brought any ore other than tetrahedrite, any copper ore other than tetrahedrite, do not do what I'm going to do today. Go ahead and hit make bronze bar, use ores right here that I've got highlighted. Do that and hit it on repeat and call it good. If your ore is straight copper, that's where you want to be. However, if you brought tetrahedrite, since you have silver in that ore, if you do make bronze bars from ore, you will lose the silver. That's bad. You'll be getting the equivalent of your raw copper, but you will not. You will have paid for the extra silver as well when you brought it as embark. So in your case, you're going to want to do it from the bars. This is slightly more time consuming. It is slightly less material efficient, but we can do each ore individually. And then put all those on repeat. Once I have done at least 1 tetrahedrite ore and 1 cassiterite ore into bars, then I will be able to turn around and make the copper and the tin bars directly into bronze. Now that requires 2 cycles per bronze, and I don't get as much bronze per cycle, so this is a little less efficient than standard. Ideally, you'll have some sort of raw copper to get started with, and you won't have to go through this problem. You'll go straight to bronze bars. So humor me for a moment while my dwarves cycle up a little bit to get to where I would normally be at this point. All right, so at the bottom you can see we're already spamming that we've run out of the few logs we brought with us. That's okay, I don't mind. If you really wanted to get started now at this point, you could disassemble your wagon and scatter your goods on the surface, and that would give you a couple more logs to get started with. But we should be finishing up with the bronze working here in just a minute, and at that point we'll start getting axes out and we can do our work. So we're on the third step here. We're making our cassiterite ore into bars, so we'll have 10 bars here momentarily. And at that point I can queue up a bronze creation job. So our smelter also has, now that we have bronze and tin created, you'll notice it's looped back to the coke. We can now add make bronze bars, use bars, which is what we're going to have to do here because we want to make the copper bars and the tin bars into bronze bars. And like I said, normally I would do this with the ores raw, and I would be able to get 4 for 1, and it would be a whole lot faster process. But today, all we've got, sadly, is this, and that's what we're going to have to make do with. Now, I do want to add a one-off task because I can. When we did this initially, we had we remember we run through the cycle once, so we've got 1 set of tetrahedrite bars, or 1 set of copper bars created, and 1 set of cassiterite bars, tin bars created. So already we've got the materials for bronze cooked up 1 time. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to queue up a make bronze bar job, throw it in there so that we'll use up one of the bronze bars for the cycle. Now that's not all the bronze we've created. You may notice when you look at this that there's 4 copper bars and 4 tin bars sitting in our inventory here. And that's because each unit of ore is going to give you 4 units of bar, basically. So a unit of copper ore will give you 4 copper bars, and the unit of tin ore will give you 4 tin bars, and so on. Occasionally, we'll get some silver out of it this way as well, but it's like a 20% chance, so we're not going to have a whole lot of silver when we're done. Now, your unit of coal will actually break down into, I think it's 3 or 4 units of coke, some ridiculous amount, unless Tony changed it, and maybe 8 now. I can't even remember. It doesn't matter. We get enough coke out of the coke we brought to more than suffice for what we're going to do. So we've got plenty of fuel queued up in our cycle, in our rotation. We've got our bars queued up, and we've got bronze being produced. As soon as that first bronze bar job kicks off, we can start making tools, and that's what we're going to do. Remember, you're going to need coke to run not just the smelter, but also the forge, so you'll have to make sure that you put that in your cycle. Like I said, you don't want to use that up first thing and then run out and then have to make more, because that will slow you down dramatically. Wood furnaces to produce charcoal, unless you have a very skilled wood burner, are much, much slower than this. Come on, CleanoDev. All right, now if we investigate our inventory, now that we've done our first bronze bar cycle, you'll be able to see over here on the right-hand side, we now have a couple of units of bronze bars, and that's what we need to actually make our tools. So let's get started on that. Now, the first tool we're going to make is actually an axe, because I want to make sure I can get our carpenter back to work before we do anything else. Everybody else can kind of wait just a minute. It's not going to hurt anything. We don't have to get underground just yet. So we'll make a couple of bronze battle axes to get us started so that we can start cutting our trees down here. And there's our farmer getting underway. He's going to make our picks our battle axes for us, and then we're going to have to cut trees. And so the next question is, well, which trees? Well, let's zoom out here a little bit. We don't need too many trees. Unlike prior versions of Dwarf Fortress where a tree was a log, nowadays a tree will give you somewhere between 5 and 30 logs, it seems like, depending on the tree and how tall it was and how it breaks down. You're going to get a lot of wood just from cutting these few sparse trees around where you're stationed. It used to be that a sparse area like this, I would have had to have ranged out pretty widely to snag enough wood to keep going. But nowadays, with the changes to the way wood has been distributed, it's not nearly so rough. So we'll set it for chopped trees. And like I said, we don't really need to clear cut the whole forest down, just a big chunk here in the middle where we can build on. And then we'll let our woodcutters start picking up axes once they're ready, and they will immediately go running out to start collecting trees. And there goes our doctor to start chopping trees. Go, doctor, go. Okay. So let's take a look at our bronze cycle here and see where we're at. We're on the next cassiterite ore cycle, so that's good. So we're going to make our next bronze battle axe, and then by then we probably are going to have enough to start doing our picks. And that way we can have a couple guys felling trees if we need to do more, while our miners get started on our excavation. And then we'll actually shift over a little bit, and I'll put most of the population we have into mining duty to start getting our space excavated as quickly as possible. As you can see, we're starting to rack up logs now because we've got a couple people doing the battle axe thing. Oh, we gotta make another battle axe too. All right, and it's canceling our jobs because our mason isn't quite quick enough to keep up with our weaponsmith, so we'll have to go back and re-add some of these jobs. Get a couple picks done first, and then we can go from there. Okay, so now we're started on our first pick. Now it's time to actually start talking about how we're going to lay out our fortress. Now, typically what I'll do is a series of circular pancake stacked floors, one atop the other. It's going to look very much like a stack of pancakes on a plate, really. With some wing rooms off the side for extraneous storage or miscellaneous, or to get more surface space. Now, before we actually start digging, I do want to take a moment and kind of show new players how the world is laid out below ground. It's the kind of thing I think a dwarf would probably know when they actually embarked, and so it's kind of useful for new players, in my opinion, to understand how minerals and layers are laid out below ground. So although I don't really use it very often when I'm doing anything other than a showcase fort, for example, something I just want to show off, if you use reveal will actually come out here and show you what's below ground. Now keep the game paused when you do this. I don't suggest unpausing the game at all. You can see here it now shows me all the material, all this soil, all the roots that were underground here in this hill. And if I start to go down, you can see the different materials involved. So this soil is in layer 1 and this soil is in layer 2. And you can see the break between the two biomes here, where they differ not just in the elevation, but in the terms of the materials, for example. As we start to dive down, you can start to see this is now stone with minerals in the veins and gems in little small clusters here. Still got sand in the other biome, and as we go deeper now, finally this gives way to stone, and the other biome is starting to give way to different types of stone. New mineral types as we get further in, deeper, 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 more veins, different minerals, more. There's flux stone here. This is we're now getting into probably marble here to guess. Could be limestone. I'll have to look. Let's hit K and find out what that really is. So marble here, and then as we get and you can see there are what are called large clusters. This is a large cluster, and then these are veins of minerals. Now these are not necessarily metals. All kinds of minerals occur in veins, not just the ones you actually really care about. So these dark blue veins are probably cobaltite at a glance. We could use them for dark blue colored stone if we want, but they're not much useful in terms of metals. As we go further down, you can start to see the caves appearing. So there's cavern layer 1, and then there's a few floors in between that and cavern layer 2, and then we're going to see cavern layer 2 make its appearance, and on down. And look, see there's a big hole here. So this cavern layer is actually connected, not just cavern layer 2 here, but as it goes down, this is actually going to connect down into cavern layer 3. So once we discover cavern layer 2, we'll get a free discovery of cavern layer 3 for bonus points. As we continue to drop deeper into the earth, you're going to see the minerals change over, and then finally the magma sea down at the bottom. Now the black areas I have intentionally left black. That's fine. There's a command to reveal those if you really want to. For now, we're just going to give that a miss. Suffice to say, there's stuff at the bottom of the world that new players are going to want to find eventually. We may find it when we're done here today, or done here with the broadcast if we move quickly enough. So that's pretty much how things are laid out. You can see there's some rotation on the large clusters, but generally speaking, each 1x1 square on your embark will have a cluster roughly in it. So at that point, you'll be able to tell, like for example, if this was a 3x3 embark, I would have those bottom 3 clusters in this area here would be still on my map, basically at that point. This is the layout. I mean, the minerals that form these clusters and veins and these gems will differ from site to site. What you have on your site is going to differ by what biomes you picked and where you've embarked and so forth and so on. But the general layout doesn't really change much. You're going to have veins, large clusters, and small clusters of stone and ore as you go down through it. Soil doesn't have anything in it. It's just the soil. So the clay you'll actually harvest just like you would stone, but sand you'll harvest differently, and we'll get to that in a bit. And that's the layout. We'll use Unreveal to turn this back off. And you'll notice it hides the map again. Now, That's important for a lot of reasons. I generally never use reveal unpaused. Part of some of the things in Dwarf Fortress are a little hard coded. One of those is the discovery of the caverns. You should probably discover the caverns in a natural fashion. It triggers certain map events that don't otherwise occur. If you discover them abnormally, you may trigger them improperly. Keep the game paused if you're going to use reveal, whether that's to cheat or whether that's to simply look at the map and understand how your map is laid out for yourself. Um, if you discover the caverns inappropriately, it's possible that you'll never get cave fungus in your farming areas, for example, and never have the ability to build, uh, let me rephrase that, won't have as easy an ability to build underground farming areas. All right, so what does all this mean to us? Well, now let's lay out our fort. And like I said, we've already looked at kind of peeked below ground to see what was there. We don't need to do that again. We'll set up an initial staircase, say in this area here, and then we'll drop that down into the ground several levels before we spread out from there for the first floor of our fort. Now, the reason we're doing that is this isn't actually going to be the main entrance of our fort. This is just a temporary service entrance for our dwarves to get stuff in and out quickly. We will either wall this over, floor it over, drawbridge it over, and use it as a on-off access, or otherwise restrict it in order to keep access out later. And we'll dig a main entrance once we've finished, or once we're ready to that point. But initially, we're more concerned with getting our living space dug out, getting our goods below ground and into stockpiles where they won't be stolen as easily, getting ourselves into some defensible surroundings. And for a dwarf, that means getting below ground as soon as possible. We have picks, or we will very soon. We're ready to get started. So we're going to designate a down staircase on the surface. Somebody donated, and it was at least $10. They can get a dwarf named after them if they want. Let's see if we can figure out who donated here. Yeah. Let's see if they asked for a dwarf. I can indeed name a dwarf that. But not yet. We're one behind. I have to wait for migrants. The rule is $25 for one of the starting 7. Otherwise, you're going to wait for a migrant. So we'll dig our staircase there, and we'll dig a up-down staircase below it. So now as we drop down into the earth, you can see now it's unrevealed again. And if I go back up, you'll be able to compare where we are. Now, if you've not played in a long time, designations are now 3-dimensional. I can now designate all of my staircase at once. We're going to drop down to about level 8 or so, and at that point we'll put in an up staircase here. We really don't need to go any deeper than that with just this service entrance, if you will. That should be down into the stone, I think. Actually, let's do this. Let's go down. Let's leave ourselves the opportunity to go one more down below that in case this is still sand. I don't think so. I don't think it was quite that deep, but we'll give ourselves the opportunity just in case. Now, as soon as the picks are finished, you're going to see our miners come racing over. Oh no, I take it back. No, you won't, because we haven't told them we want them to do mining yet. Ha ha! So let's come back over here and tell our miners to get back on their primary duty, which is mining. Now, this is where we start getting a little more advanced with Therapist. I have a whole set of custom professions that I've created, which are custom labor roles. That's all they are, just specific job setups. You'll notice when I set this guys to my custom profession, mining gets turned on, but everything else gets cleared out. And the reason is because when I make someone a crafter miner, what I really want them doing is mining, period. Full stop, end of story. I want them on mining duty unless I specifically have them doing something else intentionally. My miners will mine, and they won't do anything else. Mine, eat, sleep. That's it. The good news is that they'll also get a lot of work done excavating our fortress. We're also going to go ahead, and we're going to make our doctor and our stonecrafter into temporary miners. Now, those aren't going to be their primary professions. Well, maybe in the case of the doctor, at least for a while. But we do need to go ahead and get some space excavated. And although these guys aren't real skilled miners, they'll at least be able to contribute some labor. I'm not going to have my carpenter, mason, or planter doing these things. They all have other jobs to be doing. The planter's going to continue to make weapons. The mason's going to continue to run our smelter. The carpenter's going to continue to make wooden implements. Those guys are going to be busy enough without having to worry about excavation duty. Okay, now, properly instructed to get onto the mining duty, you're going to see them come racing for picks, and at that point, somebody's going to get started. You can already see start digging the tunnel downward. Going to promote those jobs so they get done before the axes, and that way we'll have plenty of picks to go around. Now, that kind of excavation isn't really all that long or deep and won't take that long. It's not that much stone or soil to be excavated. There, see, now we're into the stone. That's good. I don't really want to have my fort entrance proper in sand. You can. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just aesthetically displeasing to me. Please note that in the current version, goblins do not dig, and therefore we don't have to worry about them excavating our fortress. They must come in on the routes that we prepare. That's good and bad. It means that those of you who are looking to create stable defenses can do so, but those of you who are looking for a prime challenge may find yourselves somewhat disappointed by the fact that the goblins can't undo your fortifications for you. I'll live. All right, so there's our little service entrance, and off of this we're going to build a temporary stockpile, which is nothing more than an 11 by 11 room, and that's going to hold everything to get started until we have better uh, storage and space available. We'll move everything we own basically into that small stockpile. We're going to create some beds and get an initial dormitory up so our dwarves have some place to sleep other than the ground, and then we'll start excavating farms and our fortress proper. This initial hobbit hole is not intended to be a primary or final settlement. It is purely for the ability to get your dwarves underground and get fortress life started. This 5 by 5 room I'm building will eventually become a depot. The 11 by 11 storage room that we're building initially will probably eventually become a tavern. And then we'll build our main fortress with our private space for our dwarves will be over here, separated by some additional defenses. And we'll have an entrance further to the left. So wagons and visitors will come in on the left, and then they will set up they will set up in the depot. If they're going to the depot, they'll go to the tavern. If they're going to the tavern, if it's migrants, they'll move straight into the fortress from there. Um, we'll set up some additional defenses on the outside and then some more on the inside in case something breaks through, or if we have a problem in the tavern, somebody goes berserk, whatever. We'll have some defenses to protect us from our quote visitors and guests. All right, so that's enough excavation, at least to begin with. We need to make sure we get these guys one task at a time. The new version of Dwarf Fortress does allow you to prioritize mining labors. If you're the kind of person who likes to lay out your entire fortress first, you may want to go ahead and consider looking into how to allocate your labor by priority for mining. But personally, I don't usually see the need to bother. I only mark for excavation what I'm planning to excavate, and then I don't have to worry about what they'll do in sequence. Yes, but keep in mind, this two-tile staircase is just a temporary access point. It is not intended to be a permanent entrance into the fortress for anyone other than our dwarves during peacetime, perhaps. So our guys are busy mining wire. Do we really not have any more picks? Seriously? Are we still making picks? Really? We're not making picks? Why are we not making picks? Are there picks in the shop? Did we make the picks and I forgot? No, there are no picks in the shop. There's coke. Plenty of coke, right? Yep, lots of coke. Good. Got bronze bars? Yep, a couple bronze bars. We must have run out of bronze bars. The problem is doing this stuff from bars. Our mason is not actually a skilled furnace operator. He's doing this kind of as his off job. And so he's not really quick enough to keep up with somebody who's actually skilled at the job they're doing. So our bronze jobs keep getting canceled because we run out of bronze between them. So that's what's happened here. We've canceled our bronze jobs because we ran out of bronze momentarily. Now our mason is doing his best to keep up, but our weaponsmith is just skilled at what he does, so he's faster. And the stone is heavy, so moving that stuff into the smelter takes longer than moving 2 steps to pick up the lightweight bronze bars and back. So our forge operator here is going to be a whole lot faster cranking the tools out than the guy making the raw materials. Sadly, sadly. Oh, well, we're not going to build on the river. No, no, no. We're going to redirect that. If we want to get energy from the river, we're going to redirect it. We'll have an underground river that will create that will allow for water wheels if we're going to do that. No aquifers, of course. So if you were looking for that, if you're those of I've got some veterans in my channel who are discussing the river as a source of energy. And for those of you who've never gotten far enough to mess with water wheels and powered buildings, rivers and aquifers are fantastic sources of moving water, and moving water is the primary source of energy in Dwarf Fortress. You can get windmills, but they have to be built on the surface, which is kind of problematic. In this case, we're going to be able to build water wheels below ground because we'll redirect some of the water's flow to be a underground stream where we want it. Alright, so let's let these guys get these picks done so we can get all of our guys mining here. And if I look into my idlers now, the only people who are idle is the planter because he's not got enough materials to keep up with, and our carpenter who's just run through the temporary jobs we assigned him. Let's go ahead and get some training axes built because I want to be able to have some weapons on hand for everybody in case something goes south. So we're going to put together some wooden shields, and we're going to put together some let's go into training axes, I guess would be a good choice. Actually, no, let's do training spears because we can reuse those later if we really are so inclined to create a death pit or whatever. Now, let's go into the details of each of these jobs one at a time here. So let's go back up to the shields for a moment. We'll go into the details of that job. I don't really care what the material is. That's fine with me. We're good. I don't really care. Let's see. Oops. Darn it. This is something I haven't messed with since Toady put it into the vanilla game. When I did this before, I was all doing it in workflow, and so now I get to do it for real in Dwarf Fortress for the first time. Let's see. So in the details, we can set what kind of wood we want, and I don't really care about the material. So we're good. I wish it would let me just set generic wood, but it won't. So we'll use the sand pear wood since we've got plenty of that. I thought there were conditions I could set. And that would let us make our shields out of sand pear wood specifically if we wanted. I thought, however, we could specify how many to make and when and so forth. Tops and bottoms and such. What a pity. Oh well, we'll make some sand pear wood shields anyway. And, hang on. So if I do this differently, I can, for example, create a wooden shield. And the wooden shield would be made out of whatever wood was easy to hand, and the sand pear shield would be made specifically out of sand pear wood. So that would allow us to control our output. Wooden weapon is not useless. There we go. I forgot I need a manager for it. That's right. You're correct. We can actually do that now. Although we don't have an office for our manager, we can go ahead and appoint one. We don't really care. We'll tell our doctor he's now the manager. Congratulations, Doc, you're now the manager. You don't have an office and you're utterly useless as a manager in that case, but you'll allow us to actually set details and such, I'm pretty sure. So let's go back in here. Oops, not Elspeth. Someone was asking if, oops, I didn't want to do that now, actually. Let's cancel that. Someone was asking about wooden weapons being useless. They're not useless. They're basically useful only against animals, stuff that doesn't have any armor on. And even then, I wouldn't want to use wooden weapons against a giant animal unless I was forced to. I really wouldn't want to hunt with wooden weapons. They're primarily just temporary self-defense while we're waiting on the rest of the proper weapons. Wooden spears can be reused again in spike pits, for example. You can build upright spike traps and just fill them with wooden spears. It's basically just a punji pit, right? In a tiger trap. Although they don't do a whole lot of damage, when you drop someone from 12 floors or 15 floors up, whether the spikes kill them or the fall does is mostly irrelevant. At that point, you can fill them for effect, even if you're not necessarily relying on them for effectiveness. That's correct. Wooden weapons don't have edges. It used to be the case that wooden training axes would cut trees, but Tody has since made it so that wooden weapons no longer have edges and wooden axes are no longer suitable, which is a change from my prior tutorials. If you've viewed them in the past, I advised you to get some wooden axes up and you could start cutting trees immediately, and this was a faster process even than it will be, even than it would have been had we brought the raw copper ore and made bronze directly. It would have been faster if we'd been able to use wooden weapons, but you can't. You could make some obsidian short swords, but you can't cut trees with those, so that's not going to help us in this case. We could have brought some obsidian with us and made obsidian short swords with the wood and the obsidian we've got. Um, since we brought bronze, I didn't really feel it was necessary, but if you're in the case where, say, for example, you've embarked on a volcano that has no metals, if you've got the ability to make obsidian and you have some wood, you can make obsidian short swords, which are slightly better than your average wooden weapon. Not much, but nowadays, we're going to rely on actual metals, and that means copper and above. Copper, bronze, iron, steel for our weapons primarily. We'll get silver hammers. In fact, let's go see if we got any tetrahedrite. That was one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on here. Let me query the smelter and see if, in fact, we didn't get any silver out of our tetra. Not yet. Oh, wait, nope, there's one. See? So we got some silver out of our tetrahedrite. We can use that silver to make a hammer, for example, and that's actually going to work well because silver is a heavy, dense metal. It's not necessarily the best choice, but it is pretty good. You can make your weapons out of whatever you like, but when it comes to edged weapons, you generally want to respect a fair hierarchy of precedence. Copper is the lowest, and steel is the best mundane weapon. So copper, bronze, iron, steel, generally for edged weapons. When it comes to blunt weapons, you're more concerned with the weight and density of the metal than you are with its quality. And so although a steel hammer might be worth more, it's actually a little lighter than an iron hammer, and the iron hammer over time will tend to perform a little better. Silver performs right in there with iron for blunt weapons. Don't use silver for edged weapons. I'm not even sure if you can, but even if you can, you wouldn't want to. It's not a particularly good edge holding material. Yeah, go for it if you want. I've browsed one previously and I forgot to. I mean, don't know that I can actually do orders while I have uh, my manager set up, but we can try it, I guess. Let me see if I can do. Don't think I can do it from here. So I can go into here, and then I could set this job to repeat, or I could view this job if I wanted to look at it. I can go to the building. There you go, guys. Chat's provided a link to how to set up work order jobs if you want to be able to do that. And that will allow you to get into the profile of things and mess around with them. So let's see here. Let's go back in here. And we'll go into the profile of this. And we'll go into work orders. And we'll create a new order. And we're going to create sand pair training spears. So let's see. We want to do that, and then we want to say, okay, we want to make 10 spears, and that's all there is to it. If you want to make an easy one. Now, if you want to add conditions to it, in this case, so for example, we can add a condition and say we want a condition from products, and we only want to make spears until there are at most 10. Let's see, we'll add a item condition, and we'll change the item type. And you could then set up a check that would check between these if you were so inclined. Don't! Okay, so if we have no more than 10 training spears and we have at least 5 logs, once a day it will check to see if we have those things and it will start this job. If the job completes, it won't start, it won't continue from there. So this is not a way to set up a cycling job. You'll have to do something a little different for that. If you wanted to make sure that your job would run, say for example, all day, every day, then you'd either have to make the quantity of the job large enough that it would never effectively run out during a day, or you'd have to set the job up as a permanent job, basically. Uh, Once it runs to its quantity, this job will end, and then it won't check again until the next day. So if this job took a day and a half to actually complete, it wouldn't check again to start until the next following day. So it would only run, twice in 3 days at that point. You follow me? Because it wouldn't run again on the middle day. It wouldn't run a second partial run. It wouldn't start again on that middle day because the job would already be in progress. And so at that point, uh, it would skip over that point. All right. I think that should get us our training spears. And you can see that it's making 10 of 10 here, and it's going to check that. Let's see if that worked properly here. And so you can see that job is now active because it didn't meet the prevention conditions. So if we go back into that job there, let's look at the conditions again. So it will start as long as there are at least 5 logs and no more than 10 training spears, and it will go every day, and it will restart every day to check that. It won't make them if it doesn't meet the conditions, but it will continue to remake them every day when we don't. Now you might be asking yourself, what's what what qualifies as for the count? Well, if a dwarf picks a spear up, whether to move it to a stockpile or to equip it, it doesn't count in this anymore. So at that point, we would only have 9 spears, and the check would actually pass if a dwarf was carrying one of those spears around. If we take the spears and we put them into a trap, they're no longer part of our stock. I don't believe that they'll be counted at that point either. I think at that point they'll be part of an item, a building, and they will no longer be available to be picked up, and therefore they'll be counted as part of they'll no longer be counted as part of this count as well. And so at that point we would make more spears. So this is a handy way to set up a repeating job where you're going to have a small stockpile of, say, a particular type of furniture on hand at all times. If, for example, I wanted to make sure that I always had some rose gold material available for a king that liked rose gold, I could set up a small work order to make rose gold items of whatever kind I needed, and made sure that I always had them on hand so that I always had one to add to his rooms or whatever. The reason why I'm not doing 4305, I believe that 4305 has 4304 or 4305 have bugs with weapon traps, and I did want to show them that will crash your game currently if you use trap components instead of hand weapons. And I do want to avoid that because I do like being able to use regular trap components. I'm not sure if 4303 has that bug. And 4305, as I recall, is not yet up to date for hack, and I think it just got up to date for therapists, so I'm not able to show off the tools and some of the other things I've done along the way. It's really kind of nice to be able to use those features, and for new players, since they're probably going to pick up the starter pack, I kind of like to be able to show what a new player is going to get with the starter pack. That's why I'm not using 4305. So, uh, for those of you who follow it along at home, I guess I should explain. We're not on the latest version of Dwarf Fortress. There's been 2 minor revisions that have come out since 4303 originally launched. But the starter pack only updates once DF Hack and the other assorted tools are ready for use, and those haven't updated for the newest version yet. So I like to be able to show viewers the availability of those things for their own ease and convenience when learning the game or when starting to explore the depth and complexity of the game. And 4305 kind of prevents me from doing that since those aren't up to date just yet, those third-party add-ons. Um, Additionally, 4305, as I recall, like I said, has an issue right now, I think, with weapon traps, which is something I do want to avoid. And we're gonna remember to save our game and before we do our first weapon trap, just to make sure that if we build one that doesn't crash, because I believe that's what the bug is that it's actually, for some reason, causing a problem. Okay, so now we've got our wooden training spear job up. We don't really need this one-off guy here. We can get rid of him. I'll go ahead and get rid of him. And then we will add a new job here, and I'll make 10, and we'll do it because why not? Out of pear wood, or the sand pear wood. We can have all our shields uniform across everybody then. And we'll go ahead and go back into the actually, no, we're going to cancel that. Let's go into profile and do this properly. Go into work orders, and we'll add a work order. Queue up a new one. So this will make a sand pear wood shield every day. They'll try to make 10 of them every day, as long as there are at least 5 logs and no more than 10 of those particular types of shields. Now this allows you a great deal of very fine control over your fortress. Okay, so the reality is this job this isn't going to slow the game down all that much. So every day it's going to run the check on the job to say, do the qualifications meet? And either that qualification will get met or it won't. If it doesn't, then there's no further action until the next day anyway, so there's no processing impact any further on. If it does meet the conditions to start, then what will happen is that the manager works just like it always did. It queues those jobs up in whatever workshops are available. You can change which workshops take these work orders so that you can prevent, for example, some specialized workshops from getting jobs that you don't want them to get. If you have jobs that you want to be done by low skill people and jobs that you want to be done by high skill people, you can make sure that the particular workshop gets only the jobs you want. But the manager works just like it always did. Once this wooden shield job is active, it will just queue them up. So right now you can see here the wooden spear job is queued up already. The work order has it queued. And here in a moment, there's going to be another wooden shield job here. Notice this one is not on repeat. Our work order is going to come along and say, hey, we don't have 10 sand pear shields. We need to get another shield out there, and that job's going to go active. If I go to see, I think I can see that in the manager as well. If I go into jobs, does it go back through this way? Manager. Yeah, see here, and it's in the process of checking to determine whether we have the necessary materials. It's queued to check. So it doesn't check every cycle. It's only checking once per game day. So although that's much more frequently than we, the player, appreciate, because the time ticks along every few seconds here. There's another check. So 13th, and we still haven't checked for the 14th yet. So it's not really a massive impact. This is probably at least as efficient as workflow was, assuming the code is equivalent. Okay, and now if we look at our carpenter's workshop again, you'll see that the wooden shield job has been queued up because we need to make those. Now keep in mind, jobs are done in the order they're queued. So of course, if we wanted to make beds in a hurry, we would have to do something about that. And you could, of course, come in here and, if I wanted to promote this, if I had a whole lot of jobs in here and I wanted to make sure the shields got done next, I could promote that just like usual. That all works the same. But generally speaking, if you're going to queue up something that you want to maintain a stock of, that's how you're going to want to do it. That's the new workflow. That's how it works in the new game. This is an incredible amount of control over your workshop. So oops, in fact, I think I goofed this now that I'm looking at this. I'll bet I didn't do this properly. It would help if I told the shields to be made out of sandpear, because the problem I was just going to create for myself was this. I told it to make the shield out of whatever wood was available, as long as there were 5 sandpear logs on the map, and as long as we didn't have 10 sandpear wood shields. So we would have made shields until we had 10 of them, but we would have made them from random wood, and we would only have started the job if there were 5 of a particular type of wood on the map. So we would get shields made out of alder and elm and oak, and those wouldn't count to actually turning the job off because we told the job to only end if we have 10 sandpear wood shields. So we also need to change this log type here to say, oops, check daily, not monthly. We also need to check this material here to be sandpear wood. Because it's sandpear wood job logs that count here. Now notice it's queued a regular wooden shield job. Unfortunately, that's what we're going to get, so we're going to cancel that guy, and then we'll let it re-queue tomorrow. We don't need those right away necessarily, so it's not a big deal to let them re-queue at the moment. All right, now let's see where we are on materials still to be smelted. How are we doing on this? We've got still some tetra and coal in the wagon. Let's see, is that all the tetra and coal we have left? Nope, there's still plenty of coal and tetra and cassiterite left. So we've got to leave our mason doing his usual thing still. Let's see how he's doing getting materials ready for our weaponsmith. Can we start making a new batch of weapons yet? Yeah, see, he's running way behind on his output. So we're going to change his jobs up a little bit. We've got plenty of copper and tin to go for a bit. And every one of these jobs actually makes quite a bit more ore or bars than we're using. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple additional bronze bar jobs in the cycle. Alright, now that will grind through the coke a little faster, but we'll also do bronze bars in a cycle of several in a row so that we'll get a little bigger batch produced at once before we reset back to ore. I'm not so much worried about... Oh yes, you can automate everything pretty much now with the way he's changed the manager. It's definitely what he needs to do. Workflow definitely showed the way there, and I'm happy that Toady adopted it. I'm ecstatic, to be frank. It was a much needed change. The original manager was painful and cumbersome to use. You can't really use the workflow on your farms. You do have to set up your farms to plant which crops you want, set up your fertilizing and so forth. You can do it to automate the production of the fertilizer. You can do it to automate the processing of the plants that you produce. But the farming itself is still handled through the farm plots and not through the manager, as far as I know. I don't think there's any way to do it that way, and I wouldn't expect there to be, because it primarily is for workshop jobs, basically. So anything you can do in a